Welcome to the Hub's continuing 2025 election coverage. I'm Rudyard Griffiths, publisher. I'm joined in studio by Janice Gross Stein, the founding director of the Munk School of Global Affairs. Janice, great to have you with us.
Oh, great to be with the Hub. I am a big fan.
Hey, wow. Look, could not be more timely to have you here today. We are seeing major moves in markets. We're seeing major moves on the world stage as President Donald Trump ups his tariffs on China to over 100%. Janice, you've spent a lifetime looking at international affairs, and that's where I want to start with you. How significant is today in the context of the international order that we've all grown up in over the last 50 years?
That increase in tariffs is staggering, Rudyard, and I think we might look back on today and say that was the moment that the Chinese-American relationship broke apart and put them on a path, frankly, of escalation and conflict. I think it's a very, very significant day.
What does that mean, Janice, for America and China, if we're correct, and I think you are correct, that what we've seen in the last 72 hours is a new phase, an end to a kind of phony war, and the beginning of kind of outright naked competition between the world's two great superpowers. I mean, that's what they are.
I think we've taken the lining, the absorptive capacity out of the relationship. Their mutual economic dependence, the chimeric version of the world, insulated them from some of the other issues like Taiwan, like what China's doing in the South China Sea. There was insulation in the system because they needed each other. They're on a path now up an escalation ladder where, frankly, they are each thumbing their nose at the other and saying, we can take more pain than you think because we can inflict more pain on you than you can tolerate. That is not a good game to play.
Why now, Jess? Why did this happen now? We knew that there was tension in this relationship. We knew that, Americans were planning for war games to defend Taiwan. We knew that Taiwan has been threatened by China. We knew the trade irritants were there. China's aggressive actions against the Philippines and other countries in the South China Sea. Why suddenly now has this broken out in the open?
Look, let's lay the responsibility where it belongs. It's with Donald Trump's. He started the tariffs against China in term one, but they were contained, and they stayed that way. He doubled down 2 weeks ago when he started this round, and then backed it up with the following: if you retaliate, I'm going to double down on my retaliation. This kind of schoolboy bullying talk. Well, Xi Jinping had waited since Trump was inaugurated, trying to see which Donald Trump he was getting here. He found out when that threat was made. And for Xi Jinping, you save face, you don't back down in the face of a bully. He went up the ladder. Donald Trump went back up.
What happens, though? Because we now, I think you're absolutely right, we have Xi in a position where it would be very difficult for him domestically and internationally to climb down. Similarly, the Americans have said over and over again, especially this president, this administration, that China is their number one peer competitor. So for the Americans to now either take these tariffs off or be seen to be looking for a deal with Xi would signal weakness on their part.
That's what makes this so tough. That's why I frankly hate escalation spirals. Yeah. They're really tough to stop once they get started. My hunch is we're not through this yet. Despite the damage in the markets, despite the turmoil in the bond markets that is only growing in intensity as this goes ahead, it's really tough now for Xi to hold his fire and do nothing. He may be able to do that for a few days, But unless there's a signal from somebody around Donald Trump, okay, do you want to talk? Unless that comes pretty quickly to Xi Jinping, I think we're in for another round. And it's tough to know when this stops. Ultimately, it stops when one or the other says, okay, we've inflicted so much damage on ourselves at the same time as we're hurting the other guy. Maybe it's time to stop.
If you think back over your history of studying these types of conflicts, I mean, we often get, shrunk into the present. We want to know what's going to happen tomorrow. But is this the kind of thing, Janice, that could go on for weeks, could go on for months?
Months.
Okay.
Easily could go on.
So people are wrong in thinking that this is now, given who these two players are, their importance geopolitically, their animosity and competition with one another, this is something that now is going to have to work itself out.
Yeah.
And based on your experience of looking at international affairs over decades, when you have big state actors like this with deeply invested interests, things don't happen fast.
No, let me give you a concrete example, which I think our viewers would understand. It's obvious that there has been a stalemate on the battlefield between Russia and Ukraine for how long now? 18 months? Neither side wants to acknowledge that. So the Ukrainians still believe they can inflict a defeat. At least they still do when you talk to them. The Russians, we can win this whole thing. We're stronger, we're bigger. Everybody else, anybody who looks at that battlefield understands neither of them is going to deliver a knockout blow to the other, but they can't acknowledge that. We have all kinds of defense mechanisms. The same will be true with Xi Jinping and Donald Trump. Each one of them will think around the corner is the knockout blow. There isn't a knockout blow with two giant economies like that, but there's a lot of damage that each can do to the other, and the rest of us watching this are going to be damaged in the process too.
What comes out at the end of this? Does one of these countries then kind of see this struggle as the moment to capture and hold and show the rest of the world that they are the dominant power, and either the mantle of geopolitical hegemon has passed from the United States to China, or China has been stopped and America remains the global superpower?
That's how each of them sees it, for sure.
Yeah, it's scary.
Yes, it is. And you put into words beautifully there, Rudyard, and that's why this still, I believe, has legs. At some point, one of them is going to say, okay, we're the big one, but we have to live with you and you're not going away. The moment turns when one grudgingly acknowledges that the other one is not going away and they have to find a way to live together.
Right.
But that can take time, and the damage not only to the American economy, not only to the North American economy, but to the global economy can be really severe.
Let's bring this back to Canada. So we were kind of spared in the Rose Garden speech. We weren't on the list. We do have a variety of tariffs that are sectoral and affecting our aluminum, steel, and auto industry. Does the fact that Trump either inadvertently or purposely now has picked a major fight with a global peer competitor in China, does this take the pressure off Canada for the foreseeable future?
I think it helps us. There's no question about it. Most smart fighters don't want to fight with everybody in the world at the same time, right? And at the very least, they want to secure their own backyard. If they've got a tenth of a brain, that's what they want to do. If the team around Trump gets that, then the argument will be, okay, let's start these USMCA CUSMA negotiations and try to secure our rear while we take on the country that, in our view, is a real threat to us. Does that mean that those negotiations are not going to be awful? They are going to be awful. And the weekly drama and the weekly tension, you and I will be talking again. We will feel like we're going over the edge of the cliff. 20 times during the course of those negotiations.
Wow. Let's turn to the election. I don't want to talk politics with you. I want to talk international relations in the context of the election. Why is it, Janice, where every federal election we go into, we don't talk about the world? We don't talk about, in most cases, anything other than where the world impinges on the most narrow of our domestic interests. Why is this? Canada is an exporting nation. We are connected with the world. We are one of the most globally exposed countries economically. We're not a particularly big or strong country, so you'd think the rest of the world would matter more to us because our own ability to defend ourselves is somewhat limited. I mean, how are you feeling about this election and just the complete absence of any kind of serious discussion about our foreign policy?
I'm actually fine with it, believe it or not, Richard. I am truly fine with it. And why? We face the most serious threat that we have faced in 100 years. And I'm including World War I and World War II in that story.
Okay.
Because that was over there, right? And yes, we organized, and yes, we sent men over, and yes, we raised a huge army, and yes, more Canadians died before the United States even got there. All of that is true, but it was over there. Right now, Donald Trump has declared economic war on us. That concentrates the mind, and people are talking about all sorts of off-the-wall scenarios about what the United States could do to us. I think it's the ballot question, frankly. Whether that's good for the country or bad for the country is a wholly different issue. But I do think it's the ballot question, and that's all people want to talk about right now. So it is about the world, but it's just North America.
And you, having looked at threats so closely in so many different international contexts, I mean, what do you see as the American threat? I mean, some people are worried about invasion.
Yes.
Like they are worried about the United States coming north with, I don't know, the Marine Division and capturing Ottawa and planting the Stars and Stripes on our Parliament building. I sense you're not in that group. But,
no.
But what is the threat, and do you think Canadians have calibrated the threat properly or astutely?
I think they have reason to be alarmed. And here's a plausible scenario that you would sign on to, Roger. If Donald Trump keeps up these economic threats against Canada, investors will lose confidence, right? And our economy will be weakened. And we will suffer job loss. And there is no question some of our private sector leaders are already talking about moving some production toward the United States. It will be a weaker Canada if this goes on for many months. And there's an argument that's what he wants, is a weakened Canada that's less able to resist. Resist what?
Yeah, resist what?
Water is one.
Okay.
Water is the United States, just look at California, brown California.
Yeah. The Mississippi, they're lower, it's critical to U.S. shipping inside,
Yeah, the Great Lakes really matter. And they can drain and we can drain, and that's a nightmare scenario, frankly. Fertilizer. Just think about this one. The whole of the American agricultural, 80% of American agriculture depends on Canada. Because if we don't export fertilizer, they get lousy crops. So there's all of that. And if another trade agreement with a weakened Canada with less capacity to resist at the table, you know all the issues as well as I do. There's cultural products. There's our banking system. There's telcos. There's dairy. There's energy. There's the auto sector. There is a story here about taking us apart piece by piece, where, we're not the 51st state, but he's effectively got the best of us. That's what Canadians are worried about.
Are you worried about national unity coming out of this election, and the extent to which, if the Trump administration really wanted to be malicious, they will, in these trade negotiations, foment division in the country by purposely pushing issues that they know will divide the regions? So supply management in Quebec, autos in Ontario, energy out west. To what extent do you, as a strategist of international relations, worry that if there is really a mendacious intent and view here, that the negotiations themselves and what comes out of this election that we're having right now here in Canada could be almost purposely setting us up for failure?
I think that's a real risk. I think that's in fact.
God, that's a depressing thought.
I know. And let me make it a little worse. All right, because I don't usually have anything to say about domestic politics at all, and I'm not an expert, so I know what any Canadian citizen would know. But you and I both know our political parties are polarized. So one can imagine a Liberal majority in this country, which has very few seats from the West, right? One can imagine a Poilievre government, which doesn't represent the big cities in this country, particularly in Quebec and Ontario. So if you play, there are divisions already. If you're smart,
right,
and this is your agenda, you play on those divisions. And you layer on top those trade issues that are going to divide the center from the West, we could have a national unity crisis in this country. There's no doubt about it.
Mm-hmm. So finally, what's your advice to our next prime minister, whoever that might be? What could they do to lessen the chance of these less than good outcomes, which, the kind of known unknowns that
Right.
we're talking about and that we can see here out on the horizon? What are some of the things we could do from a policy perspective? Either talk about them in the campaign to get Canadians understanding that they're coming, maybe not, or after an election, do some of the tougher stuff that, frankly, we're not going to talk about at a campaign.
I think we can't talk about them in the election because they're vote losers, and neither leader is going to do that. So what are the things that we can do? Build up our internal market so that all parts of the country benefit more from being in Canada. And that's a powerful antidote to a national unity crisis. I really think the internal tariff issue, Rudyard, is a must-have for this country. And then, we need a defense industrial base in this country, given what we face. Those benefits can be spread across the country. So the next prime minister has to pay a lot more attention to knitting this country together. So do something which simultaneously benefits Alberta and Quebec.
Right.
Don't do regionally focused stuff. Try to do stuff where the benefits break through these regional rivalries that have bedeviled us for so long. And finally, there's nothing that concentrates the mind like an external threat. When Canadians come together. Canadians have historically forever come together when we don't want to be American. And that is very much the mood of the time. So even the Parti Québécois in Quebec right, is singing a different song because whatever grievances Quebec has against the rest of Canada, they don't want to be American.
Final question. Can we all think that this is 4 years of turmoil and trouble, and after this, something will emerge in the United States that is, if not a return to normal, a tack back to an America that is more friendly towards Canada, that understands the value of reciprocity, that understands the value of the historic relationship and respects it?
You asked me an easy question because you only went out 4 years. And I can't believe there will not be a reaction, especially if the things that you and I are worried about, stagflation, that really hurts the middle class in America. They will vote against it. That's what middle classes do. They vote against the government that produces stagflation because it's ruinous for them. But what about 8 years? That's the real issue. Is Trumpism and MAGA bigger than Trump? Does it survive? I think the answer to that is government has to work better for people. It has to be about getting stuff done, getting stuff built. Rudyard, they haven't done well enough, and we for sure haven't. Right. That's what the next prime minister of this country has to do. They have to get stuff done. And if we were in private, I would use a 4-letter word.
Well, Janice Gross Stein, founding director of the Munk School of Global Affairs, where you're there now as the acting director. Thank you so much for coming on the Hub's channel for our 2025 election coverage. It's so great to get your analysis and insights.
It's a pleasure to be here. And of course, I watch and read the Hub as we go through what is one of our most consequential elections.
Oh, it's very kind of you. Janice, we'll do this again soon. Be well, and thanks again for coming down.
Pleasure.